वेलकम दोस्तों, मेरा नाम अमित चौधरी and I'm a part of Career Planners talent team, and today we are going to discuss a bit about communication skills. And you know, we have already prepared around 2 videos on communication skills. In one video we use a shot from a movie, The Pursuit of Happiness, and in another movie I taught you how to handle most frequent questions in an interview. But today what we are focusing on, again it's a video presentation. We are using this video technique to teach you how to communicate well in front of a gathering, a public gathering. Maybe you can call it presentation skill, but it's primarily a major part of communication skill, because you have to be confident enough to stand on the stage and address the crowd, and that's very important, because unless we overcome our that public fear, that stage fear, we cannot be claimed to be a good orator or a good communicator. So today we are watching this video clip by Steve Jobs. This is one of my favorite clips. I will tell you that I would really request you to watch this video, because today I am sharing something which I have inculcated within myself through this entire period of research and understanding the process of knowledge transfer. While I worked in various multinational companies, I trained thousands of salespeople, and I realized that communication is about being honest, communication is about being straightforward, and communication is being about creative. So we learn these 3 arts of creativity, the presentation skill, the communication skill, and how to be creative while speaking, and how to be genuine, how to be honest, how to be dependable, how to be reliable, how can people actually put their trust on you. We will learn through Steve Jobs, the master of oratorship, the master of entrepreneurs, the master of innovation. So Steve Jobs is delivering a speech at Stanford graduation meeting, and this is one of my favorite speeches, because in this clip Steve Jobs tried to be very honest. He used the material from his past life, he got philosophical, he got nostalgic, but he delivered his message very clear cut. So let's watch this this video with subtitles. We will find big subtitles, and then we will discuss how to learn something out of this video. Let's watch. Sort of brightness.
I'm honored to be with you today for your commencement from one of the finest universities in the world. Truth be told, I never graduated from college, and this is the closest I've ever gotten to a college graduation. Today, I want to tell you 3 stories from my life. That's it. No big deal. Just 3 stories. The first story is about connecting the dots. I dropped out of Reed College after the first 6 months, but then stayed around as a drop-in for another 18 months or so before I really quit. So why did I drop out? It started before I was born. My biological mother was a young, unwed graduate student, and she decided to put me up for adoption. She felt very strongly that I should be adopted by college graduates, so everything was all set for me to be adopted at birth by a lawyer and his wife. Except that when I popped out, they decided at the last minute that they really wanted a girl. So my parents, who were on a waiting list, got a call in the middle of the night asking, "We've got an unexpected baby boy. Do you want him?" They said, "Of course." My biological mother found out later that my mother had never graduated from college and that my father had never graduated from high school. She refused to sign the final adoption papers. She only relented a few months later when my parents parents promised that I would go to college. This was the start in my life. And 17 years later,
so here's $1 million, 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, 400, 500, 600, 700, 800, 900. That's $1 million right here.
I did go to college. But I naively chose a college that was almost as expensive as Stanford. And all of my working class parents' savings were being spent on my college tuition. After 6 months, I couldn't see the value in it. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, and no idea how college was going to help me figure it out. And here I was, spending all the money my parents had saved their entire life. So I decided to drop out and trust that it would all work out okay. It was pretty scary at the time, but looking back, it was one of the best decisions I ever made. The minute I dropped out, I could stop taking the required classes that didn't interest me and begin dropping in on the ones that looked far more interesting. It wasn't all romantic. I didn't have a dorm room, so I slept on the floor in friends' rooms. I returned Coke bottles for the 5-cent deposits to buy food with. And I would walk the 7 miles across town every Sunday night to get one good meal a week at the Hare Krishna temple. I loved it. And much of what I stumbled into by following my curiosity and intuition turned out to be priceless later on. Let me give you one example. Reed College at that time offered perhaps the best calligraphy instruction in the country. Throughout the campus, every poster, every label on every drawer was beautifully hand calligraphed. Because I had dropped out and didn't have to take the normal classes, I decided to take a calligraphy class to learn how to do this. I learned about serif and sans serif typefaces, about varying the amount of space between different letter combinations, about what makes great typography great. It was beautiful, historical, artistically subtle in a way that science can't capture, and I found it fascinating. None of this had even a hope of any practical application in my life. But 10 years later, when we were designing the first Macintosh computer, it all came back to me. And we designed it all into the Mac. It was the first computer with beautiful typography. If I had never dropped in on that single course in college, the Mac would have never had multiple typefaces or proportionally spaced fonts. And since Windows just copied the Mac, it's likely that no personal computer would have them. If I had
right. So let's understand this part of the speech, this part of the presentation. What Steve Jobs was trying to portray was a nostalgic view of his childhood. He was trying to talk about the way he was adopted by a family and they were not educated properly, so they had to commit that they are going to educate their child, and hence Steve Jobs got admitted into a college. But while studying in that college, he realized that the courses offered in college are too costly for him to handle, to pay for, and he realized the worthlessness, the futility of those courses, and finally he decided to drop out. Once he dropped out of that college, he was free to choose what he wanted to do, and hence he joined a typography class. Typography is primarily a science or an art where they tell you how to create beautiful words, beautiful handwriting. And that's what he learned because he was interested in typography, but he had no idea that how this typography learning is going to help him in the future. But later on, when he started Apple and he was working on those types, so today what we use is Times New Roman, the Arial, the serif, the sans serif, all these typographies, all these fonts were invented by Steve Jobs while starting his Macintosh computer or whatever Apple computer. And that's why, and then he was a bit sarcastic and he said, if had I not invented those fonts, then probably Bill Gates or Microsoft would have never copied it and used it in their window computers, because they claim that fonts were discovered initially by Steve Jobs, used in the Apple computer, and then finally it was copied blatantly by Steve Jobs in the window copies, and he became more popular at that point of time than Apple. So it's a bit of sarcastic tone, but understand the way he's connecting his past to the learning. He's saying that you need to work with love. You need, so what I'm trying to teach you, that while talking to public, while speaking to people, you should try to be very honest and connected to your life, and you should try to take learnings from your life. Always use learnings from your life, and those learnings should be deep rooted in some philosophy which must have inspired you to achieve something. Because when you tell your success story with a bit of truth from your life, which might be a bit of exaggerated, then people can connect to it. So that's very important. So what he's trying to say, that when you choose things what you love, he chose typography, then he was able to use that learning in the future. So whenever you learn something with a particular sort of interest, so when I appeared in an interview in BIT Mishra and they asked me, are you a hard worker? I said no. The entire interview panel was sitting. I was in the interview of one of the prestigious colleges of this entire Bihar Jharkhand area. So that BIT Mishra appeared in the interview and they asked me, are you a hard worker? I said no. They asked me, are you a smart worker? I said no. They were completely hopeless about me. They said they haven't said, but they might have meant that you are useless, you are not a hard worker, you are not a smart worker. I said, sir, there is nothing like hard work, because we all work hard to earn our livelihood. We are born in India and we know how we need to fight to exist. And smart worker is completely a fallacy. It's a deception, because no one can be a smart worker. There is no shortcut to success. So I said, I am not a hard worker, I am not a smart worker, I am a person who works with love. So I learned a bit from this speech. I said I work with love. I am only interested in working on those things which I really like. So I drop things which I don't like. So I like this teaching thing, so I am teaching you. I dropped many corporate jobs because I haven't liked that. So the same learning I want you to take, that somewhere focus on things which you love and put that thing in your interviews and in communication. Talk about your interests, talk about your hobbies. What you do in your free time is something which is a matrix to measure your personality. And never say that you wasted your time, because there is nothing like wasted time, because what you enjoy doing in your free time is the real learning. So always focus on your hobbies, the learning from those hobbies, your interest, and always try to convey that passion. Somewhere try to connect that passion to your work. I'm not saying if you're a gardener, then you should work as a gardener, but I'm saying always inculcate that hobby and always include that love factor, the things which you like doing, because that will strengthen your personality. So let's watch what he has to offer. So the speech will get more interesting later on.
Later, when my parents promised that I would go to college. So I wanted to do with my life, and no idea how college was going to help me figure it out. And here I was, spending all the money my parents had saved their entire life.
Excellent.
Bottles for the 5-cent deposits to buy food with. And I would walk the 7 miles across town every Sunday night to get one good meal a week at the Hare Krishna temple. I loved it. And much of what I stumbled into by following my curiosity and intuition turned out to be priceless later on. Let me give you one example. Reed College at that time offered perhaps
Calligraphy, I was talking about that calligraphy course.
Throughout the campus.
Play करें.
None of this had even a hope of any practical application in my life.
Yes.
But 10 years later, when we were designing the first Mac,
So first Mac computer he designed with that knowledge of typography, the understanding of fonts.
Beautiful typography. If If I had never dropped in on that single course in college, the Mac would have never had multiple typefaces or proportionally spaced fonts. And since Windows just copied the Mac, it's likely that no personal computer would have them. If I had never dropped out, I would have never dropped in on that calligraphy class, and personal computers might not have the wonderful typography that they do. Of course, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward when I was in college, but it was very, very clear looking backwards 10 years later. Again, you can't connect the dots looking forward.
So just understand this word, connecting the dots. What he is using is connecting the dots. It means you cannot predict your future, but when you do something and then you look back, then you find something in the past which you can connect to it. So you might have flunked in a subject, you might have lost something in your life. You didn't realize the real meaning, the real significance of that pain and that loss, but when you look back in your life, then you realize that pain, that loss was something meaningful to give you something.
You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. Because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart, even when it leads you off the well-worn path. And that will make all the difference. My second story is about love and loss. I was lucky. I found what I loved to do early in life. Woz and I started Apple in my parents' garage when I was 20. We worked hard, and in 10 years, Apple had grown from just the two of us in a garage into a $2 billion company with over 4,000 employees. We just released our finest creation, the Macintosh, a year earlier, and I just turned 30. And then I got fired. How can you get fired from a company you started? Well, as Apple grew, we hired someone who I thought was very talented to run the company with me. And for the first year or so, things went well. But then our visions of the future began to diverge, and eventually we had a falling out. When we did, our board of directors sided with him. And so at 30, I was out, and very publicly out. What had been the focus of my entire adult life was gone, and it was devastating. I really didn't know what to do for a few months. I felt that I had let the previous generation of entrepreneurs down, that I had dropped the baton as it was being passed to me. I met with David Packard and Bob Noyce and tried to apologize for screwing up so badly. I was a very public failure, and I even thought about running away from the valley. But something slowly began to dawn on me. I still loved what I did. The turn of events at Apple had not changed that one bit. I'd been rejected, but I was still in love. And so I decided to start over. I didn't see it then, but it turned out that getting fired from Apple was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. The heaviness of being successful was replaced by the lightness of being a beginner again, less sure about everything. It freed me to enter one of the most creative periods in my life. During the next 5 years, I started a company named Next, another company named Pixar, and fell in love with an amazing woman who would become my wife. Pixar went on to create the world's first computer-animated feature film, Toy Story, and is now the most successful animation studio in the world. In a remarkable turn of events, Apple bought Next, and I returned to Apple, and the technology we developed at Next is at the heart of Apple's current renaissance. And Maureen and I have a wonderful family together. I'm pretty sure.
So
I dropped out of college after the first 6 months, but then stayed around as a drop-in for another 18 months or so before I really.
So this part primarily is dealing with the second part of his life, where he started Apple, and then he became he was the founder of Apple. He started the Apple in his garage with a friend, and then later on he hired someone from a beverage company, and he became the superpower in the company, and finally he somehow created that sort of stratagem and pushed Steve Jobs out of the company. But Steve Jobs never lost that sort of interest in his work. So the most important thing is not to chase a target, but to love your work, to love your path, because happiness is not found at the end of the journey, it's found along the path. So somewhere he realized that he is still interested in starting something new, and since he was out of the company, he started, so he became fresh, he became a beginner, he became, and he said, that's why I use certain words, he said, ki the baton that was passed to me, I was somewhere losing because I was out from my company, I was depressed, and we all became depressed in many times in our lives when we lost something. But then he restarted, he started working on another company, he started Next, which is again a Pixar, and they started animation movie making, and it got Oscars, and it became one of the most popular animation studios in the world. And finally Apple bought that Pixar, and finally he came back to Apple again, so he resurrected. And that's why he's saying that the technology we invented in that animation studio, which is Next or Pixar, that became the heart of the Renaissance. The word he used is the Renaissance. Renaissance means sort of revolution, a dawning, a new knowledge. So he said the technology I invented in that animation studio again became the heart of Apple, and he again became the powerful person in Apple. So he regained what he lost. So it shows somewhere your determination. So whenever talking in an interview, you talk about aspects from your determination, aspects from your willpower, where you try to control your destiny, where you try to change the course of action, where you struggle, even if you failed, because organizations have started to accept that people may fail. So that's not an issue. Even your failure could be a part of a resume. And in many of the foreign countries, they include their failed startups as a part of their resume, because they got, so whenever you are discussing anything, you need to talk about learnings. If you're preparing your resume, if you're talking in an interview, or if you're addressing maybe a crowd or something, you need to be very particular about your achievements, your learnings, whatever you learned from things. Even if you fail, you must have learned something. So when I talk about my family, I talk about my learnings, which I learned from my parents, from my brother, and from my cousins. When I talk about my graduation subject, I talk about my learnings. When I talk about my current organization, I talk about my learnings. When I talk about my hobbies, I talk about my learnings. When I talk about my academic projects, I talk about my learnings. I always focus on my learnings. I use my learnings throughout the interview, and learning is a very important thing because it shows that you are a positive person. So we are just going to play it because you will find it more interesting now. We are just going to move forward.
I would have never dropped in on that calligraphy class, and personal computers might not have the wonderful typography that they do.
थोड़ा सा
Of course,
आगे,
it was impossible.
थोड़ा सा इससे आगे ले जाना है.
Again, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. Destiny, life, karma, whatever.
आगे.
Because believing the stating, I really didn't know what to do for a few months. Again, less sure about everything. It freed me to enter one of the most creative periods.
So he's saying that he started his new company.
I looked in the mirror every
right. So we were here, right? So this was the part. So we will play from here.
We developed it next is at the heart of.
So it became the heart of the current Renaissance, the revolution.
Have a wonderful family together. I'm pretty sure none of this would have happened if I hadn't been fired from Apple. It was awful tasting medicine, but I guess the patient needed it. So failure is a medicine, and success is nothing but moving from one failure to another failure without losing your enthusiasm. It's about depth. When I was 17, I read a quote that went something like, "If you live each day as if it was your last, someday you'll most certainly be right." It made an impression on me, and since then, for the past 33 years, I've looked in the mirror every morning and asked myself, if today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I am about to do today? And whenever the answer has been no for too many days in a row, I know I need to change something. Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices in life. Because almost everything All external expectations, all pride, all fear of embarrassment or failure, these things just fall away in the face of death, leaving only what is truly important. Remembering that you are going to die is the best way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose. You are already naked. There is no reason not to follow your heart. About a year ago, I was diagnosed with cancer. I had a scan at 7:30 in the morning, and it clearly showed a tumor on my pancreas. I didn't even know what a pancreas was. The doctors told me this was almost certainly a type of cancer that is incurable, and that I should expect to live no longer than 3 to 6 months. My doctor advised me to go home and get my affairs in order, which is doctor's code for prepare to die. It means to try and tell your kids everything. You thought you had the next 10 years to tell it in just a few months. It means to make sure everything is buttoned up so that it will be as easy as possible for your family. It means to say your goodbyes. I lived with that diagnosis all day. Later that evening, I had a biopsy where they stuck an endoscope down my throat, through my stomach and into my intestines, put a needle into my pancreas and got a few cells from the tumor. I was sedated, but my wife, who was there, told me that when they viewed the cells under a microscope, the doctor started.
So, I want you to note down these words, what we are getting, the sedated, you got these words. I want you to note down these words and put on comment all the meanings of these words so you can ask and we can have a discussion. So, I want to contribute, you to contribute in the process of the learnings, right? So, it's talking about that fear of death is very important, because it's not about fear of that, it's about the truth of that we all are going to die, and that's a fact. So if we understand this thing, then there's nothing to lose, and fearless personality is something which is liked by all the people. So when a person is fearless, he is proactive. When a person is fearless, he is risk taker. When a person is fearless, he is adamant about his point of views, and he is a leader, because a leader has to be fearless. Fear can be calculated, that's okay, but it cannot hamper your zeal, your enthusiasm. And he's talking about that I realize that one day we are going to die, and hence I realize I have nothing to lose. And there was a story from his life where he was diagnosed for a pancreatic cancer, and he never realized that he is going to die so soon. But then just see what happened, because the doctor started crying, because somewhere they detected that this is curable, and he was saved. So he's saying that close proximity to death helped him in realizing the futility of life, the luxuries, the pleasure, and hence he realized that he has to be completely fearless. What I am trying to tell you, that this aspect of being fearless, this aspect of being confident is something very much essential to portray your personality to an interview, because a modern day interview doesn't require a person who is not a problem solver. It doesn't require a person who cannot change things, who cannot challenge things. You need to challenge the status quo, and that's a bold personality that you need to portray in an interview, right?
Crime, because it turned out to be a very rare form of pancreatic cancer that is curable with surgery. I had the surgery, and thankfully, I'm fine now. This was the closest I've been to facing death, and I hope it's the closest I get for a few more decades. Having lived through it, I can now say this to you with a bit more certainty than when death was a useful but purely intellectual concept. No one wants to die. Even people who want to go to heaven don't want to die to get there.
So that's the
And
point.
yet, death is the destination we all share. No one has ever escaped it. And that is as it should be, because death is very likely the single best invention of life.
See the
It's
statement.
life's change agent. It clears out the old to make way for the new. Right now, the new is you. But someday, not too long from now, you will gradually become the old and be cleared away. Sorry to be so dramatic, but it's quite true. Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't be trapped by dogma. which is living
Dogma.
with the results of other people's thinking.
Prejudices.
Don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your own inner voice. And most important, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become. Everything else is secondary.
So what he's trying to convey that you should not waste your time in understanding or realizing someone else's dream or opinion. You should have a dream and you should move forward with that dream. So that looks like philosophical, but what I'm talking about, while talking in interview, while talking to someone, you need to focus on your aspirations. You need to talk about your aspirations. So you need to create a log line for you, a statement for you, what you want to become after 5 years, after 10 years. These questions are often asked in an interview. So you need to you need to be very clear cut. And when you are talking about your goals, don't talk about that I want to become a CEO of this company, or don't talk about that I want to earn this much. Talk about what you want to do. What position do you want to acquire? What sort of responsibility do you want to carry on? Because that's something very important. Your personal aspirations, your dreams, that's not very important to an interview, but your dedication or your passion related to whatever you want to learn in your job is something which they want to encourage, right?
When I was young, there was an amazing publication called the Whole Earth Catalog, which was one of the Bibles of my generation. It was created by a fellow named Stuart Brand, not far from here in Menlo Park. And he brought it to life with his poetic touch. This was in the late 60s, before personal computers and desktop publishing, so it was all made with typewriters, scissors, and Polaroid cameras. It was sort of like Google in paperback form 35 years before Google came along. It was idealistic, overflowing with neat tools and great notions.
Right? Idealistic. It was aspirational.
That's it. No big deal. Just 3 stories. The first story is about
ये शुरू से आ गया क्या?
The dots. Sort of like Google in paperback form 35 years before Google came along. It was idealistic, overflowing with neat tools and great notions. Stuart and his team put out several issues of the Whole Earth Catalog, and then, when it had run its course, they put out a final issue. It was the mid-1970s, and I was your age. On the back cover of their final issue,
see the climax.
was a photograph of an early morning country road, the kind you might find yourself hitchhiking on if you were so adventurous. Beneath it were the words, "Stay hungry, stay
foolish."
It was their farewell message as they signed off. Stay hungry,
stay foolish.
Stay foolish. And I've always wished that for myself. And now, as you graduate to begin anew, I wish that for you. Stay hungry, stay foolish. Thank you all very much.
So understand this statement, and this is the climax of the entire presentation, the entire story. Stay hungry, stay foolish. And that's where he wanted to say that you should be always hungry for knowledge. This hungry word is very important because that would portray your personality. If you are talking about various extracurriculum activities, if you are talking about various certification courses, if you are talking about various projects that you have handled, that will always impress a person or the interview board. So what you should do, you should start doing things which you like. So pick up few projects, and you can do self-driven projects. So if you are associated in a college, if you are in a college, of you maybe even if you are part of career planner, there are many faculties in career planner who has vast experience in banking and other corporate areas. So you can get in touch with those people and you can actually pick up certain projects. And this is the practical side of the entire speech. You should start working on your project, because until you have certain projects in your resume, you cannot prove that you are hungry for knowledge. If you are hungry for knowledge, you cannot be a simple graduate. You need to do something else. So जो उर्दू में एक शेर है कि ऐ मेरे अहबाब क्या कारे नुमाया कर गए, पैदा हुए बीए किया नौकर हुए और मर गए. So this should not be the objective of the life, right? You cannot just do a job, get a degree and die. So you need to somewhere talk about those projects. So when I was in my MBA college and I got placements in so I got around 3 placements in my B school, and I was probably the only student to get 3 placements because I worked on many projects. I started many self-driven projects. I studied a bit about telecom industry. I did a bit about retail industry. So if you are targeting to go to a banking industry, pick up something on ATMs, pick up something on new technology, pick up something on biometrics, and do some project. Get in touch with your faculties in the career planner. They will guide you about various topics on general awareness and about technical things which is required in the banking, and then you can research those things and you can put those things in your resume. You can highlight those things in your interviews, right? And the other point is stay foolish. Foolish is about doubting yourself. You should always have somewhere, you should have a doubt on things which you do, and that will inspire you to learn more. So even we started our doubt centers because we want you to get in touch with us, because whenever you feel there is something, there is some discrepancy in anything, you should tell us. We will obviously try to improvise those things, right? So if I am delivering something and you didn't get certain words, you should put in the comment box and I will personally respond and I'll tell you how to use those words. So this should be a bit of interactive, because communication skill is not about like, so if you want to learn swimming, you cannot just sit on the beach and watch someone swimming and you cannot learn swimming. You need to get into the water, right? So if you want to improve your communication skill, you have to talk to me. You have to, so obviously in doubt sessions, whenever we are conducting, you can send your video, say about a presentation or something on certain topics, maybe about your introduction, or maybe just record something where you are addressing to a crowd, and I will give you feedback on how to enhance your communication skills. So obviously that's a part of communication, that's a part of your doubt session, right? So this is a very inspiring speech. I will probably come with more videos, more clips, so you can understand these nuances of communication skill, right? So in next class we will be watching another clip from another movie, and that's a very inspirational sort of lecture by, it's a black and white movie clip, but we will be watching that, and that's really inspirational, and that comments somewhere on the society also. So this I hope this helped you, and please share and please comment. Thank you.